obviously the main reason why we're doing this interview is because you've just released your latest album, Mind Altering Substance. So we'll get on to talking about that in a bit. But first of all, do you want to just tell us a little bit about who is VJ the Music Man?
Absolutely. VJ the Music Man, I am a 25-year-old queer Indian American singer-songwriter based out of North Carolina. I have just put out my fourth album, but I love to dabble in pop, R&B, and hip hop genres. I always try to include a little bit of like my Indian cultural element in terms of my vocal training in the background of the music that I create, but I try my best not to subscribe to just one genre or box myself in. I'm always looking to evolve and grow, and yeah, my fourth album, Mind Altering Substance, just dropped Friday, May 3rd, and it is available to stream everywhere now.
I mean, that is something that I noticed as well. I haven't had a chance to go back and listen to your previous discography, but one thing that I did notice was you've been very like consistent since like the 2020s. It's pretty much every year that you've been putting out like a massive body of work, which I think is quite admirable.
Thank you.
Like, how did that come about?
So, if you can believe it, there were about three or four projects prior to my first album, Escape the Retrograde, that came out in 2020. So, there's three or four projects of just unreleased music that was sitting on my laptop just because I had been creating and creating solo music since about 2018, which is just 2 years prior. But again, even during that period of time, even though I wasn't releasing anything, I was always writing because writing has always served as like a form of journaling for me, being introspective. I write from a very like autobiographical perspective. So I'm just writing what I know about and what I'm going through. So the intent is never to create something that's going to be relatable to the masses. It's really just to get my thoughts on pen and paper, but I've always been so, remarkably taken aback by audience response to something that I thought was so personal and just something that related to me. It's always just one of those things where you're like, okay, here's yet another thing that is not an original thought or idea. This is something that all human beings kind of go through. And I think because I'm writing from such a personal and kind of journaling sort of place, making an album 2020, 2021, 2023, 2024, it sounds like a lot, and it definitely has been. But for me, it's literally just getting my thoughts out on pen and paper and just continuing to live my life.
And I imagine that's something that kind of comes naturally to you because I was like reading into a couple of interviews you've done previously, and so you're like into like psychiatry and stuff,
Mhm.
right? That is what you do outside of music. So I imagine that kind of goes hand in hand with this idea of getting your thoughts out and processing them and that sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think like one of the like foundations of like therapy in general is journaling, and I think that that's been what's helped me so much as a person, and to, again, like I said, find a way to almost allow my music to be something that can heal people in its own way, is kind of my newfound purpose when it comes to what I'd like to do musically. I love hearing from friends, family, or random strangers that this song that I may have written for the intent of partying or an absolutely different circumstance helped the person get through the day. Like, I think that's just a beautiful concept that words can have that much meaning.
And I mean, as well, like I said, I haven't had a chance to listen to them, but it's my understanding that your previous three bodies of work do come together as sort of a trilogy.
Yeah.
So this new project, Mind Altering Substance, is that sort of like a move away from maybe a previous sound that embodied those three projects?
So I think that's a great question. The three albums before are interconnected in terms of the story that they were telling, almost like the evolution of this person, this artist, this idea of EJ the Music Man, and this alter ego, the Mad Hatter, kind of clashing together to form that alliance between like security in your identity when it comes to sexuality, your culture, your ethnicity, and who I am as an artist. This album's a lot more about like what it's like to take that security and now give it to another person in a relationship. So I would say this album of work definitely, or body of work, definitely steps away from what the trilogy was. You can hear elements of different albums that I've done before in this project, but the feedback I've gotten thus far is that it's a much, much, much more elevated sound. It steps away, it's a lot more adventurous, and I think this time around, as I've continued to grow with each project, I've definitely invested more in like mixing and mastering so the sound quality can get a little bit better with each body of work. And I've heard that this one is definitely, I'm hearing people are enjoying like kind of the top tier production quality on this album.
For sure. I mean, I personally, having listened through to it, I really enjoyed how because again, I've read that like your previous work is very much like electronic like based a lot
Hmm.
more, but with this I did get that still, in the sense that I could hear that obviously there was plenty of like electronic instruments and arranging within it, but at the same time there's a lot more of that raw like live instrument sound to it as well, and it was kind of like you kind of got these little electronic motifs, but then also at times almost like kind of like a maybe like 70s soft rock kind of
Hmm.
vibe to some of the songs, like that
Hmm.
kind of thing. So it was nice to have an album that isn't like the songs all fit together, but at the same time it's not just 14 songs that are all exactly the same, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's what I've always tried to pride myself on, because I can get very bored when I'm listening to artists that I think what they see as a cohesive album, which obviously has a place of its own in the industry. I think that's fantastic. I just think that all of my favorite artists that I listen to are constantly genre bending throughout their project, and they stick to one message. So it's still a cohesive album in that way because it's telling a story, but they don't stick to just one sound. And I think I've definitely cultivated that in my own work as well.
And I think you said as well, so as the main message that you're trying to go get through this album is like kind of to do with like relationships and how what it's like to actually share love with another person.
Yeah, yeah, it's like experiencing that level of it ultimately comes down to self-love for sure. To be able to have the security to give yourself to somebody else in that way, whether it's a platonic, familial, or romantic. I think, and that's what I explored during this period of time. I'm like, I finally feel like I'm secure in my identity. I just think that it's very easy to feel like you're in the best place mentally when you're single, or convince yourself that you're in the best place mentally, because you're not sharing certain intimate aspects of your life with one other person, right? But then when you experience being in a relationship, and for somebody like me that has not been in a relationship before prior to this, it can be very scary to find that the person that you're with is able to harness all of the insecurities you feel about yourself and find a way to accept them in like 5 minutes. Some things that you may have continued to battle for like decades on end, it's hard to wrap your mind around how somebody else was able to love those parts of you that you hate in such a fast manner. And I think it's exploring themes like that, the idea that like love can be so intoxicating. You can go through periods of obsession and withdrawal with it, but ultimately it's finding your own healthy relationship with yourself that is going to actually help to conquer whatever it is that's going on.
I mean, that must be really special as well to be able to kind of explore what is your first relationship through music as well. Like, so I don't think like necessarily a lot of people do get that opportunity. Like, I think a lot of people maybe once they're making music of a standard that yours is at, maybe they've like been through a couple of relationships before. So it's really cool like to actually hear music that's like of this level of production, like you're saying, but like it's about the first relationship.
Yes, yes, I'm really excited about it.
I found it really cool as well because obviously one of the singles that you've put out from it before, Limerence, I didn't like. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know what that word meant, and I looked it up and I was like, oh wow, it has this whole Wikipedia page that's actually explaining this concept and stuff, and I was like it must be really cool, as I was saying, to like kind of explore that like for the first time sort of thing, like through music as well.
It absolutely was, because up until a few months ago, I mean, I wrote that song back in October, and until me and my friends were having a conversation about relationships and falling in love, and I think one of my friends mentioned the fact that this is something limerence, and I was like, limerence, like what is that? That word just sounds so cool, and so I went down my own rabbit hole of like researching what this is, and I was, like I said, I was going through falling in love for the first time, and to hear about what limerence is, this idea of like bringing past baggage from other relationships and projecting it onto the one that you're in, that's crazy, because it's so natural to do that, whether it's a friend, a family member, or somebody that you're falling in love with. And so I think it's important to identify that period of limerence. And again, the only way to get over it is to find that relationship within yourself, figure out what it is that you are missing from yourself that you're seeking from other people.
And I mean, we've got like some visuals for Limerence as well. Like, are you planning to put out some more from this project?
Absolutely. I have recorded 5 music videos for this album. So there was one for my first single, So Happy You Knew, that's already out. One for my second single, Limerence, that's already out. And then in the next week or so, I'm going to be putting out the visual for the title track, Mind Altering Substance. And the other two visuals that I've got planned that have already been filmed are My Problem, which is very unique because I think it's like kind of like the summer hit of the album. So I'm kind of waiting until Pride Month, June, July to be able to like release it. It's getting three different versions of a video, which is very exciting to me because with my prior project, Uglies, I kind of went all in on the visuals for that and created one horizontal video. And I think that's great. It'll stand alone in theory, and I definitely think that video will stand the test of time. But my goal with this project is longevity, and I wanted to cater to what people are consuming digitally right now in media, and that's a lot more vertical content. And so all the videos for this album have been filmed vertically. And so the My Problem video that's getting three different versions is three different vertical versions, different outfits, different choreography, different sets. It's going to be a lot of fun.
No, that is really cool. And like obviously like from like because I think Uglies was the first the song of yours that I think we were introduced to, and it was really cool to suddenly like it was very much like straight in like all this dancing and like visual production and everything. So I think we definitely know that you can bring that. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that when My Problem comes out.
Oh yeah.
I mean, on the topic of like Pride Month as well, that was one thing that I noticed. Like I liked slipping in to a couple of the songs. It was suddenly very like Vogue style rapping kind of vibe that was there. So it was nice, like whenever that kind of came out, sort of thing.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really glad you noticed that. That's what a lot of my favorite rappers do. I love rappers that don't really take themselves too seriously, and that allows them to like explore places that they would typically be afraid to go just because they're like, oh, this is not what real rap is. And to this day, I don't consider myself a rapper. I consider myself a singer. Period. But I know I'm a singer who can rap. And so when I kind of like throw in a verse, something there, it's usually to change up the production or where I feel the song might be getting monotonous. I think that throwing in a rap in certain places can definitely bring in a whole new dynamic to a song. And there's a song on this album called Never Thought I'd Lose You that is a almost more country pop-esque song in a very conventional like Florida Georgia Line, BB Rexa kind of way. But the verses are all rap, which is kind of something that's unexpected, and I think people have been kind of thrown for a loop with that one.
100%. Like that was one where like when the guitar like kind of came in at the beginning sort of vibe, I was like, okay, it's going this, and then you start rapping. I was like, oh, okay, I really wasn't expecting like
Yep.
that to be how the song starts. It's just really cool to hear you say that because obviously that is like literally exactly like what I got when I was listening to it.
I'm really happy to hear that because that's again, it's not something that you would conventionally expect. I am very, very excited that there's a song that exists, and that was again, there's a few different like kind of risk-taking moments I feel on this album where it could have absolutely and can still possibly backfire. But again, I sit in that place of if I don't try it, I'm never gonna know if this is something that could work, and I'm just excited to do that over and over again.
Well, definitely looking forward to seeing the rest of the visuals from the project and like honestly listening through to it again because I mean we get like we play music on this show all the time and like it's great to always support like South Asian artists and their music, but it's not every time that like I'm listening to an album I'm like, okay, like this is genuinely something that I would maybe listen to outside of this setting. So like yeah, no thank you. I'm like looking forward to seeing what you do with it.
Thank you. And I mean, obviously, shout out to Mango Masala because, you guys have put me on to so many amazing, cool South Asian artists. And I think that, I was looking through a few of the different posts that you have up on the Instagram. And I think that a lot of South Asian artists are doing something cool and, paving their own ways in the industry. I think I'm excited to see more of us, kind of taking over into the mainstream. And I would also just love to, I think a lot of us bank on this idea. Something that I did too with Uglies was to kind of like this almost hook and reel kind of marketing perspective where it's like, as an Indian, you feel almost obliged to pay homage rather to artists that have come before you and that have taken up that space. And that's what inspired me to do Uglies is, people see me, they see an Indian man and they think this is the kind of music that I can create. But in reality, my preference is to do R&B and pop in the same and take up the same spaces that non-Indian people take up in the mainstream. And so Uglies for me was kind of like bait to kind of grab attention from people who think, okay, this is the one thing that Indian artists can do, and then kind of expose them to like a variety of different kinds of music that I'm capable of creating. And so that's why there is no uglies on this album, there's a lot more. I play a lot more with my voice and singing, but I'm not trying to dive in too deep into my culture in the very specific kind of way. Instead, I am interested now in placing Indian people in places that we wouldn't conventionally be seen.
No, 100%. And this is like a big thing that we talk about quite a lot of the time is like we should be seeing South Asian people in the mainstream in certain positions that they're not, but the fact that they are South Asian shouldn't necessarily be their defining feature. I mean, if that's what they want to do, that's up to them. But like at the end of the day, like people like yourselves, for example, should be able to occupy certain places in the music industry without having to every single song be an uglies, for example.
Agreed, agreed. Like for example, I mean, it's a little bit of like a teaser, but the My Problem video is based a lot in this idea of what, like an 80s jazzercise aerobics kind of space, like some place that you would expect to see like a John Travolta, Jane Fonda, Jamie Lee Curtis, like these icons that are in like the Hollywood industry. I don't think we really see Indian people taking up space like that. We're not typically cast in videos to do those kinds of dance moves or shown off as people that, with bodies and ideas that are worth pursuing or seen as conventionally attractive. And so in that video, I was like, yeah, I want a bunch of Indian men and women standing in 80s workout gear, flexing their muscles and doing all these different workouts because we don't see that. Where is another video where we get to have that? And I think it's simple. It's not as intricate or complex as Uglies was, but sometimes it doesn't need to be. That work almost like stands and has its own message without having to be so on the nose.
Thank you for that spoiler because I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that now. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me today. It's been a pleasure. For the people at home that maybe don't know where to find you or your music, where's the best place to find you on socials?
So my socials are pretty easy. On Instagram, I am at VJ the Music Man. That's VJDA Music Man. And on TikTok, I am at VJ the Music Man 98. In terms of where you can find my music, it's on any streaming platform under the artist name VJ the Music Man. I think the big ones are Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Pandora, but you can literally find me anywhere. And my latest album, Mind Altering Substance, is available now to stream and purchase on vinyl.
Oh, vinyl as well. Wow. Okay. I love that. The artwork as well. That was like really cool.
Thank you.
Was there any kind of like thought or meaning behind that?
Oh, absolutely. There was a lot of thought and meaning. Again, my favorite artists, I love when they kind of what I used to gravitate to in my favorites. I'll give you an example. Like when Rihanna put out her album Talk That Talk, I love the album cover art. And in terms of the song titles, as a new fan that was kind of getting into her, if a song title looked pretty interesting, I was going to click on it. So I was going off of how Rihanna marketed her music to me. What is going to reel me in? So I wanted to do the same with my album cover. I wanted it to be something that's like, oh yeah, if I see that on Spotify, I want to click and see what this artist is doing, Because I think the music industry, frankly, has gotten very lazy. I think we are so used to now just literally taking a selfie, slapping a filter over it, putting the parental advisory in one of the corners and calling it an album cover. And for me, the thought process behind this project was so intricate, I wanted it to reflect with the album cover. There's a picture in my medical school textbook of the first person that was experiencing tetanus before the vaccine was invented. And they're kind of laid sprawled back on their hands, fully naked, body just fully horizontal, and like experiencing what a tetanic spasm would look like. I wanted to recreate that, but in a more artistic way. And what the message of the album is, it's the death of the old self and birth of the new self through almost this like drug trip. And the overall drug we're exploring on this album is psychedelics, specifically mushrooms. And so I wanted to almost be like this old version of me is on the ground, new version sprouting out from the ground like a mushroom with a little bit of light shining from the side onto my heart to show the whole love is like a drug concept. And so that's what the thought process was behind that album cover.
No, honestly, like when you've explained that now, it makes so much like sense. Like I think that is like you say, it's really cool to like see that on Spotify, be like, oh, that's really interesting, and then to like hear the story behind it as well, and it all come together. And I think you're right as well. Like I think in the streaming age, it's becoming ever more it's becoming a common occurrence for people to not really care about their artwork, and it just be like even just like a color and like text and stuff like that, which, like I say, if that's what an artist wants to do, great. But at the same time, like it not even from the perspective of staying true to the artist's self, but also like you were saying, it's actually in their favor when there's so much on Spotify to actually have something that stands out and actually does like draw people in as well.
Agreed. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely.